Gotta catch 'em all. Or in this case, gotta beat the crap out of them all. Pokken Tournament for the Wii U came out on March 18th for $59.99 and puts you in direct control of the Pokemon, going one-on-one to determine who's the very best like no one ever was. But before I begin this review, disclosure time. I suck at fighting games in general, unless it's titled Skullgirls. I fall into the more casual type of player, however I will try to analyze the bigger fighting elements of this game. Keep that in mind going forward. To begin, this is one of the hardest reviews I've done since I've started reviewing games on this channel. Not hard as in the game is difficult, and not hard as in analyzing individual pieces of the game. No, what's hard here is the final score and compilation of things, because Pokken Tournament is all over the place in terms of consistency and quality. There's so many elements of the game that hit all ranges of the scale. Some of the very best elements of the fighting game genre are here, but there's also some of the very worst in games in general here as well. To say that the package is a bit uneven is an understatement, and this game will be very specific to each personal experience. So with that said, let's get to the gameplay right off the Zubat. This is a fighting game, so your job is simple. Whittle down the opponent's life to knock them out. The standard match is a best of 3, but certain modes will allow you to change that up. What's unique here is that the gameplay is a mixture of 2D and 3D elements of fighting games. There are 2 phases, Field and Duel. You can switch between them with specific attacks and combos, and each character has a different set of attacks for each of the phases. Now, the main fighting generally works on a rock, paper, scissors type system. Normal attacks like punching and combos will be able to break through throw attempts. Throw attempts are able to easily deal with counters and guards. And counters and guards can wreck normal attacks, assuming you can keep them up long enough. Now of course, attack priority, speed, and power play a part still, so you'll still see the normal combos and juggling that you would expect from a fighting game here. Now as you fight, you earn synergy. When you've got a full meter of it, you can transform into the Mega form of your Pokemon, whether it be a Mega Evolution or just a more powerful version of that character. This is your burst form, in which you hit harder, may have more range, and have access to one powerful burst attack, which is the equivalent of an Ultra from the Street Fighter series. Now this feature is done reasonably. Some characters' weaknesses in some areas are made up for their unbelievable synergy burst power. Gengar comes to mind. But what's better here is that the other player can reasonably fight back even if you've popped it. It's a game changer but not a death sentence, and the fact that meter earned carries over between rounds means you have to manage it wisely. You can even in some cases steal synergy from a player, which means that aggression may be the better idea in certain situations. You also get helpers in support Pokemon. These Pokemon will either launch attacks at your opponent to help you in combos or dealing damage, buff you to increase your stats, or debuff your opponent. Now, you're only going to be able to do this once per round, maybe twice if you choose a Pokemon that recharges fast, so again, you've got to use this in the right situation. I do feel that there are some choices here that are significantly better than others, but that could also be due to my playstyle as a whole. They do have a reasonable effect in battle, as certain matchups become a lot easier with the right support Pokemon choices. The game's overall mechanics feel like a good balance between simple and complicated. There's a reasonable tutorial here to help teach you combos and learn the ropes, but it's no Skullgirls, as it doesn't necessarily do a good job of teaching you when to use your skills. But hey, it does a lot better than Street Fighter V did at launch. For advanced players, abilities like canceling and zoning are still strong here, and yet the layer of the 3D portion may enhance it even further. As to the rock, paper, scissors system, it's not new in the genre, but it feels different enough so it stands out. In particular with the critical hit mechanic. For example, if you break through a throw with a normal attack, its damage is enhanced, making it a critical hit. In addition, that hit may have secondary effects, like giving back HP or causing attack defense debuffs. Even one critical hit can drastically swing the tide of battle, meaning even if your opponent has 1 HP, the match is far from over. And that's a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it puts some real excitement into fights, as battling back from the brink of destruction can be a great feeling, especially when your opponent seems like he's in a dominant situation. Comebacks are more than possible at every moment of the match. But on the flip side, it can undermine what has occurred to that point in the match. Some of the smaller ideas of chipping away at your opponent's health gets lost because of this, because of the size of the dramatic turn itself. You can get a good 3 to 4 combos on an enemy landed, but one successful critical hit can immediately invalidate it. That's going to drive some people nuts. Now for me, this is a positive for the game more than anything else, but then again, I tend to be the one doing the comeback if anything. And in terms of variety, the game shines in its fighter selection. Each fighter does feel unique. There's no real duplicates here, and each of them feel like they can be really mastered. Sure, Weevil and Pikachu seem to be wrecking people's shit right now, but I don't see any reason that couldn't be Gengar and Machamp tomorrow. That's because each fighter has a reasonable core set of strengths and weaknesses that differ so wildly between them. Every move given to each character had a purpose to it, whether it be to punish aggression, playing mind games with the opponent, or zoning them away. Now some may complain about the lack of fighters here, but rather than give us copies or more of the same, Nintendo focused on the quality of each character that was put in. Even Pikachu and Libre Pikachu feel significantly different from each other. This is one of the highlights of this game, and it makes it shine because of it. There's also a focus on charging that took me a while to get used to. For example, you can charge your counter, and the longer that you do, the more damage it will soak up. Release it at the right time to dish out incredible amounts of damage. However, let it go too soon, and you'll lose that bonus, along with getting your head stomped in. On the surface, this adds more variety, and adds to the complexity of battle, as misdirecting the opponents with cancels or even tricky moves was a big part of the strategy. But maybe it's just me, but I really had a hard time in terms of reading the movesets of opponents, so I couldn't really take advantage of it. In particular, there'd be colored glows when certain actions were performed, like green for throwing. And yet, I found that to be inconsistent at times, where I sat there going, wait, he was throwing? As I got hurled into the next hemisphere. It also doesn't help in Synergy Burst that your Pokemon gives off Kaioken type energy effects, and it becomes harder to see. Now, I can't sit here and say this is going to affect everyone, but I found myself really having trouble focusing on the elements I needed to key off of in this game. Also, the phase shifts, while different, really made for a weird experience overall, in particular with the fighting pace. When the game is in the field phase, the game is a lot slower. Magic attacks and zoning makes a bigger impact, and combos seem to be more drawn out as well. But once it shifts into duel phase, it feels like going from first gear to fourth. The action picks up, the damage comes out quicker, and overall it feels faster. See, to the game's credit and discredit, I never felt comfortable playing it. Going into a fight, I never really could settle into a groove of what to expect, and that was weird, especially for a fighting game. It's not like there's a lot of random elements to the game here. The arenas are basically the same, fighters don't have a lot of variation in terms of their moveset, and yet at the same time, I never felt in control. Even after playing the same character for several hours, I felt like I still had a lot to learn, a lot to understand, and I don't know when that will stop either. I'm not even talking about the game's advanced tactics here. I'm talking literally understanding a character in and out. Online-wise, the game shines. Matchmaking was quick, easy to pick up, and even easy with friends, and it actually punishes players for dropping out mid-match. It's almost like that feature should be a standard in the fighting game community. Street Fighter V. The netcode was pretty good as well, as in my time with the game, I only ran into one game with lag, and even then, it was definitely better than other games I've seen in the genre. It's good to see that Nintendo put a focus on this. But the story, oh god, the story. Look, basically Mewtwo has a stone lodged in his shoulder. It's consuming him, the world's energy is getting sucked out because of it. Defeat Mewtwo, win the Pokemon League. There, done. You can skip through the entire story now because my god. Even by fighting game standards, this writing is bad. Bad. I didn't really want to know what was going on at a certain point because the game bored me to death. And that's when the game actually got involved in storytelling, which took it halfway through story mode in order to really start telling it. And the voice acting is probably one of the worst I've heard in a long while. I'm not talking the Pokemon cries or anything, I'm talking about the humans. Unless some of the characters are supposed to have their souls sucked out and all personality ripped from their existence, then the game failed in this presentation element. I can't emphasize this enough. I expected better out of a Nintendo game in this area, even if they've had problems recently in terms of localization. It's just plain awful. And do yourself an immediate favor if you do get this game. Go to this menu, go to this option, and immediately reduce the amount that Nia talks. Because not only does the character cycle through the same phrases really quickly, to the point where every match started with the same darn line, but this character was the equivalent of Navi from Ocarina of Time. And thank you for that comparison on stream, watchers. Those who watched me on stream could probably hear me wishing violent thoughts on her well-being the entire time. Oh, and that's if she's not telling you something that actually doesn't help you. Use your synergy burst. I don't have one. That was one of the special rules for this fight. Are you not even paying attention? Just please go away. See, what's strange about Pokken Tournament is that Nintendo's seal of quality is somewhat missing here. Like menus, for example. Yes, I'm talking about menus. Why force me to go to another set of menus to set my partner Pokemon in support for the single player when you could have just put up a selection screen in it, like it did in the free battle mode? Visually, the game is hit and miss as well. Now, I appreciated the detail to fur in terms of seeing it on Pokemon like Blaziken, down to individual fibers. But on the other hand, the Wii U's engine compared to other platforms shows its downsides here, as there's some blurriness to several character models, and that's just strange. I mean, Nintendo, regardless of its hardware, always had one of the best presentations thanks to some great art design and focus. Here, I feel like it's a shade below their normal standard, as there was things I definitely noticed while playing, and some elements stuck out like a sore thumb. I'm looking at you, infamous Blaziken crotch feathers. But visually, I really was disappointed that there was no cosmetic options for the actual Pokemon. In mirror matches, your opponent got a different color palette, and usually some cosmetic to tell them apart. You know what would have been great? If you extended the trainer customization that you made to the Pokemon. You want to feel a connection to the Pokemon you're fighting or fighting against? That could have been it. Because let's be honest, no one cares about the trainers in a Pokemon fight. No one. Pokken Tournament surprised me in several ways, but that's a double-edged sword, however, as while I see a lot of potential for the game and its unique twist on the genre, I also found a game that was very hit and miss in my enjoyment. At times, I was flying high, enjoying winning and losing in a constant battle with my opponents and the mind games to play on them. But an hour later, I found myself picking the game apart, wondering why things were implemented in certain ways, and wondering if Nintendo understood exactly what it was doing. It was so all over the place that I sat here for a long while, picking apart the score I gave it over and over and over again. In the end, I finally settled on an 82 out of 100 for Pokken Tournament. It is a solid game to pick up, unless you are hurting for cash at the moment. Now look, it barely squeaks into this zone, but on retrospect, the highs of the game seem to outweigh the lows, and I did have a lot of fun with it. And the fact is, it's a lot different than other fighting games out there, while still being familiar enough for those fighting fans out there. However, my reviews contain enhancers, specific criteria that can enhance or reduce a score based on the certain gamer that's picking it up. So, without further ado, the enhancers. Take off 8 points if you're a single-player fighting game fan only. If you're the kind of person who only plays fighting games against the computer, I'm here to say that Pokken Tournament isn't a good fit for you. While the AI can have its moments of brilliance, each Pokemon's specific AI falls into predictable patterns based on their strengths, and you'll be able to exploit them easily over time. The game really shines when you've got another human player on the other side of the battle, and the lack of substance to the story mode just makes a game that isn't for you. Add 10 to the score if you're in it for the long haul. I feel like Pokken Tournament has that element that will reward players who will want to play for a long time coming. While there's no daily challenges or variations in characters like Mortal Kombat X has, The core fighting experience to me has that element of chaos and variety that I think will keep people playing this game over and over. Now give credit to the character selection here. To me, not one stands out as overpowered and a top tier like the others, at least from a normal online mode situation. Take off 4 points if you're a Nintendo fanboy. This is the most subjective of the enhancers listed, but it's something that I feel needs to be pointed out here. Something about Pokken Tournament's overall presentation, something that Nintendo is really known for, it feels off here. Usually menus and visual effects never cross my eyes in terms of Nintendo titles, and yet this one did. It's about the lack of polish. Something about this title in particular felt like Nintendo focused on some other elements in the QA process than normal. If you're expecting what you'd normally expect from Nintendo here, you may be disappointed in what you see. Add 8 points to the score if success does not equal fun for you. I will say this, even with all the times I lost online due to my poor battling skills, I rarely got angry. Sure, I faced players who would spam, and I'd get disappointed on stream with my own performance, but I never got to a point where I would have thrown the controller down and walked away. That's kudos to this game's design. Anyway, if you have any more questions about the review in question, leave them in the comments section below, and I'd be more than happy to answer them. And for those who saw the live stream of the game from me, I have a question direct to you. Do you want to see more of that? Or could you do without it? I'm not the greatest of personalities, I know that, but I was surprised with the meager numbers I did get, so I have to consider doing it more for the future. Again, leave the feedback below. Thanks for watching, and keep on gaming. Thanks for watching. Like the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe if you want more content like this. In the description below, you'll find the Steam review accompanying this vid, along with social media that you can follow me on, Twitter, Google+, and Facebook groups. And if you want to support the channel, click that Patreon on the left of the screen. And remember, keep on gaming.